It's time to throw in the towel. We are not seeing Nintendo Switch 2 this year, at least if the events of last night are anything to go off of. Because Nintendo had their financial report last night, and they came out and basically said nothing. Said nothing about Switch 2, at least. They did talk about their financials for the quarter, as expected, which aren't looking great, which lends credence to the idea that we should be expecting Switch 2 probably next year, as Nintendo wants to reverse that sales decline, that profit decline. But in any case, some people were holding out hope, especially those clowns over at the Switch 2 subreddit, and I mean that literally, their profile icon's a clown, I love them though, is the fact that people are hoping that we might get some news about the Switch 2 here, as they have sometimes talked about upcoming things at prior investor meetings. But this time, all they had to say is to reiterate what we already knew before, that they're only going to talk about Switch 2 by March 31st of next year, and that's it. So basically, it's been in front of us this entire time. They are not talking about Switch 2 until next year, because at this point, this year is off the table, in my opinion at least, because if they were going to talk about it, they would have mentioned it last night, and it's clear at this point they just don't want to interfere with holiday sales at all, and they want all focus to be on the Switch 1, especially with all the games they had coming out, like Mario Party, Zelda, and now Brothership in like a day or two. So yeah, they want all focus on Switch 1. Now, that does mean at this point that we have a better window for which they will talk about Switch 2 being next year, which again, we've known about all this time. Specifically, I would say between mid-January to end of March again. So that'd be fun for us to take a look at this window in Nintendo's history and see if we can kind of figure out when we may expect to see Switch 2 actually release. Because at this point, we know that, again, they'll be talking about March 31st at the latest, and I think, again, that gives us some clues to work with here. So I actually prepared a couple of spreadsheets that may actually give us a better idea of when we can expect Switch 2. So this is all, obviously speculation. It may amount to nothing. This whole video may be pointless, but that'd be fun to explore when it could actually happen based on what little information we actually have. So first of all, I want to go to a thing a Redditor created, actually, this awesome art. So let me give them credit here. John Lewin, I believe, I probably mispronounced that, but they created this image a little while ago that just has a recap of when every major Switch console or Nintendo console released. And what's interesting is a trend that happened over time where they used to launch in the fall with, we had October, we had August, we had September, before they solidified around a date in November, which is interesting, or a time in November being the November 18th, November 19th, and 18th again. So basically the same day in November. Until that is with the Switch, where that completely changed with it launching way earlier in the year, being March 3rd. Now it is a handheld, so it's a little bit different, a hybrid I should say, because we have had the GBA, for instance, launched in around the same time period as well. But for a console, for a thing that's half console, this was very different for Nintendo. And it's not the only trend that's changed over time. As you probably know, the window in which consoles are first shown off and then released has also narrowed a lot too. So much, in fact, I'm not even actually using those dates for the spreadsheet in full. I am for the Switch, but for 3DS and Wii U, I'm actually using the first proper blowout being the E3 after they were shown off, I believe, if I remember correctly. In any case, these were the first full proper reveals of the system with game libraries and all that. And even then, we can see a clear trend with 256 days from the 3DS's announcement to release. For the Wii U, that was only 168 days. Then for the Switch, it was only 134 days. And again, that was from when the Switch was first revealed, not even counting the actual proper blowout they had a few months later. But the reveal was like 90 seconds, or 2 minutes or whatever it was, 2.5 minutes. Whereas, we didn't really know much more about it until a couple months later. But even ignoring that fact, it was only 134 days, let me get rid of that formula there, from its announcement, its first reveal, to its release, which is crazy low. That's only 4.5 months. So that is a crazy short period. So if we take that number, 134 days, and assume that maybe a number Nintendo may be working roughly with in the future, and apply it to the date that we know Switch 2 could be announced at the latest, assuming Nintendo doesn't delay that plan, well, that tells us that the possible release date for the Switch 2 we're looking at is August 12th, which interestingly would go back to the period in which they used to release systems, being again that fall period. In this case, it'd be closest to the SNES, which is kind of interesting. With that being said, there is no, guarantee that that's when that's going to happen. First off, the release period may be longer. It could be shorter. We don't know for sure. But I am assuming they're working with, again, a similar time period. But continuing that thought, there's also the chance that they could talk about it before March 31st. That's just a last possible day, and I think it is still likely that it happens around then. but there is a chance it may not happen as well, especially for another reason, because if we take a look at the Nintendo Switch release schedule, well, we have something happening in January, being Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, and we now have something happening in March, late March, being Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. And even though Nintendo, I don't think will let any single game release stand in the way, there is a big gap there too, being February. There's still a good chance Nintendo will announce something in that time period, you know, that could come out then. But for now, there is a giant gap there, and I think it's possible that that gap is when they actually end up talking about Switch 2, which would be a full month to month and a half prior to the latest possible release now. So let's plug in a date here. Let's go February 15th, right? February 15th for a possible release. Apply that to the 134 delay to the release and see where that takes us. Well, look at that. That is a midsummer possible release now. We're looking at maybe a release in June, on around June 29th, or, you know, end of June or early July, whatever. So a possible summer release, which would be pretty much unheard of for Nintendo, but then again, so would the Switch's release date. And I think at this point, I think more than anything, I think it's less about, you know, what season is coming out and more about, you know, the general idea of launching outside of the holiday season, which is what Nintendo used to do for 3 generations in a row. And I think this could make a lot of sense. Like, Nintendo at this point, I think, is looking at the soonest possible release date to get the Switch 2 out that's feasible for them. And at this point, very clearly, it seems unlikely it's going to be, you know, much earlier than this, given the fact that they still need ramp-up time to you know, announce and do marketing and all that for a major platform. And so a summer release, I think, is possible, and especially because I really think at this point now, Nintendo may want to avoid launching too late in the year, because it worked out so well for the Switch where it almost gave them 2 launches. They had the initial launch in March, possibly being June in this case, then with the holiday season, it almost acts as another launch, especially if they pair that with a major holiday title. Because no matter what, they're going to sell out at launch. So it doesn't make any sense to waste that launch momentum on the holiday season, which would naturally give you a boost anyway. It's always Nintendo's strongest period of, or strongest time of year. So why waste it if you can avoid it when, you know, and launch earlier when you have all this momentum from what's a hot system right now. Switch is still, you know, it may not be, you know, the burning embers of the sun hot as it was, you know, a few years ago, but still a really potent system. Point is that this release, I think, still makes a lot of sense because it still avoids a holiday season and, you know, could work out. In any case, there's a few more things I want to explore here, but there's a couple other ideas I have. Because if we scroll down here, there's a couple other dates I want to mention. First of all, just for FYI, we're 146 days away from March 31st as of today in the making of this video. So, in case you were curious how far away we are from the last possible announcement of the Switch 2, well, there you go. But beyond that, there's another factor I wanted to explore, and that's the fact that we've seen another trend in Nintendo, which is a little weird, being a broadening trend when it comes to, or an extended trend when it comes to their Switch or their platform successors, like you know, upgrades to the same system. So with the 3DS XL, new 3DS, Switch Lite, and Switch OLED, what we saw is an actual expanded amount of time from their announcements to their release dates, with 37 days to 43 days to 72 days to 94 days with the Switch OLED. Now, I don't know what that necessarily means a whole lot, but it got me thinking, what if they're treating the Switch 2 more along the lines of an iteration, even if it's still a brand new platform? What if they are not a brand new platform, but like, you know, a brand new system? What if they are thinking of it more in lines of it being like just another Switch model, like continuing that trend? In which case, we could be maybe looking at a narrower window from announcement to release. So let's go with, just for fun, 94 days. So if we go with 94 days from, sure, let's stick with February for now, why not? 94 days, that gives us a possible release date in May 20th. Now, I don't think that's quite going to happen because, again, there's no reason to think Nintendo's going to treat it purely as an iterative system. They still probably want a larger or longer build up to it, but, you know, it is possible. But assuming that's not quite the case, what I thought would be fun is if you take these two numbers, the smallest window, the latest trend for a system's date from announcement to release being the Switch is 134 days, combine it with the Switch's OLED, the most recent iteration, being 94 days from announcement to release, and then average the two out, what does that give us? 114 days, which if we add that into the possible calculator here, that gives us a possible release date of June 9th if we assume an announcement in mid-February. But if we assume worst case scenario, with March 31st. That gives us a possible release in July 23rd, 2025. In any case, no matter how you look at this point, we are looking at a possible summer release. But I think March is just, you know, it's very unlikely we see it by March unless they go with an extremely truncated window. I don't think it's happening. Plus, you know, developers could leak things with a release window that narrow. I think we're still going to look at, you know, some months, at least 3 months in this case, from announcement to release. But I think no matter how you run the numbers based on precedent, we're looking at probably, I think, a very likely summer release. Now, again, things could change. It could be possible that the Switch 2 just isn't ready or the software isn't where it needs to be for release. And it's possible Nintendo goes back to that November late year release. You know, maybe September or September or October, as we were discussing earlier, maybe possibly even November, as I said. Which could make sense considering there's still 2 other Switch titles, 2 big ones being Metroid Prime 4 and Pokemon Legends Z-A or Z-A, that are planned for release this next year, and we don't know when they're coming out yet. So they could help fill in that gap until Switch 2. I will say though, I don't think them being here is proof of much of anything, because I think for one, you can release Pokemon Legends whenever you want, and you'll do great even if Switch 2 is already out. And Metroid Prime 4, I still think there's a chance that could be a cross-compatible title, or, you know, effectively a launch title for Switch 2. Anything can happen at this point. Nothing's off the table. We don't know for sure. I'm just going off recent history and the fact that Nintendo specifically did give March 31st, which indicates to me that they probably want to release it not too long after and have all that hot momentum from announcement going right into launch, you know? And yeah, I thought that was just kind of interesting to explore. Anyways, that's my random video for the day. I thought it'd be fun to explore some possible scenarios for the Switch 2's release. And I want to hear your thoughts on what you think of my madness. Is there any method to this madness? Let me know what you think of it. When are you expecting Switch 2? And when you're, you know, both in release and announcement, I would love to hear your thoughts. With that, everyone, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching my insane video, and we'll catch you later. Bye, everyone.